Margaret Maggie Chen had walked the same streets of Riverside Heights for 25 years, her postal bag slung across her shoulder like a familiar friend. At 53, she moved with the steady rhythm of someone who had found her place in the world, delivering letters and packages to the tree-lined streets of this quiet Colorado suburb. Her graying black hair was always pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her weathered hands knew every mailbox, every doorstep, every resident by name. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The neighborhood had grown around her over the decades. She had watched children take their first steps, delivered college acceptance letters, and carried condolence cards during the hardest times. To the residents of Pine Valley Drive, Thornbrook Circle, and Heritage Lane, Maggie was simply part of the fabric of their daily lives, as reliable as sunrise, as comforting as home itself. What they didn't know was that Maggie Chen carried more than mail through their peaceful streets. She carried secrets that could reshape their understanding of the quiet woman who always had time for a kind word and never missed a delivery, even in the harshest Colorado winters. Every morning at precisely 6:45 a.m., Maggie arrived at the Riverside Heights Post Office, a modest brick building that had served the community since 1967. The facility hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine, and Maggie was its most consistent component. She sorted mail with methodical precision, organizing each route with an attention to detail that impressed even the youngest postal workers who had grown up with smartphones and GPS navigation. Her supervisor, Tom Bradley, often joked that Maggie could deliver mail in a blizzard with her eyes closed. He wasn't entirely wrong. Over 25 years, she had memorized not just addresses, but the intricate details of daily life that most people overlooked. She knew that Mrs. Patterson on Pine Valley Drive always waited by her window for her Social Security check on the third Thursday of each month. She understood that the Chen family, no relation despite the shared surname on Thornbrook Circle, received packages from their daughter in Seattle every other Tuesday. But Maggie's awareness went deeper than routine customer service. She noticed patterns that others missed. The way Mr. Williamson on Heritage Lane had started ordering more medical supplies. How the new family in the corner house on Aspen Court had expensive security equipment delivered despite claiming to work ordinary retail jobs. The unusual frequency of overnight letters arriving for the retired professor at 447 Pine Valley Drive, all bearing return addresses from places most people couldn't locate on a map. These observations weren't nosiness. They were instinct. An instinct honed by experiences that had nothing to do with delivering mail, and everything to do with staying alive in places where attention to detail meant the difference between coming home and disappearing forever. Maggie's route covered approximately 8 square miles of suburban Colorado, winding through neighborhoods that represented the American dream in its most tangible form. Two-story colonial homes with wraparound porches sat alongside modern craftsman houses with carefully maintained gardens. The streets were named after trees: Pine Valley, Oak Ridge, Maple Grove, creating the illusion of a community nestled in natural beauty, though the nearest significant forest was 40 minutes away. The residents were predominantly middle-class professionals, teachers, accountants, small business owners, and retirees who had saved enough to enjoy their golden years in comfort. They drove sensible cars, attended community meetings about snow removal and street lighting, and knew their neighbors well enough to accept package deliveries when someone wasn't home. It was the kind of place where the biggest excitement was usually the annual 4th of July block party or the occasional coyote sighting that would have everyone talking for weeks. Children rode bicycles without helmets. Doors were left unlocked during afternoon naps, and the most pressing security concern was teenagers occasionally egging houses on Halloween. Maggie had chosen this route deliberately when she started with the Postal Service. After years of living in places where every shadow could conceal a threat, where every conversation might be her last, she had craved the peaceful predictability of suburban life. She wanted to be surrounded by people whose biggest worry was whether their lawnmower would start on Saturday morning. Her small apartment was a 10-minute drive from her route, in a modest complex that catered to working professionals who valued quiet over luxury. The unit was sparsely furnished but meticulously organized. Everything had its place, from the neatly arranged shoes by the front door to the single coffee mug that sat in the dish drainer each morning after she washed it. Visitors, though there were few, might have noticed that the apartment felt more like a carefully maintained way station than a home where someone had lived for decades. The walls were bare except for a single photograph of a mountain landscape and a small mirror by the entrance. No family photos, no personal mementos, no indication of a life lived before arriving in Riverside Heights. To her neighbors in the apartment complex, Maggie was polite, but private, the kind of person who nodded pleasantly in the hallway but never lingered for conversations about the weather or weekend plans. Her daily routine was as precise as her mail sorting. Each morning she woke at 5:30 a.m. without an alarm clock, a habit developed long before she needed to be anywhere by a specific time. She prepared the same breakfast, oatmeal with fresh berries and black coffee, while listening to the local news radio station. By 6:15, she was dressed in her postal uniform, checking the weather forecast and planning her route based on expected conditions. The drive to the post office took her through the awakening suburb, past joggers beginning their morning runs and early commuters warming up their cars. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, reliable and unremarkable, the kind of vehicle that could blend into any parking lot without attracting a second glance. The car was maintained with military precision, regular oil changes, proper tire pressure, emergency kit in the trunk containing items that went well beyond standard roadside assistance supplies. At the post office, Maggie's coworkers knew her as dependable but distant. She participated in mandatory safety meetings and office birthday celebrations with professional politeness, but she never joined the informal gatherings after work or shared personal stories during lunch breaks. Her supervisor appreciated her consistency and lack of drama. Her colleagues respected her work ethic even if they found her somewhat mysterious. What none of them realized was that Maggie's reserved nature wasn't shyness or antisocial behavior. It was operational security, a deeply ingrained habit of maintaining protective distance between her current identity and a past that could never be fully left behind. She had learned long ago that the safest way to disappear was to become invisible in plain sight, to create a life so ordinary and unremarkable that no one would think to look twice. The residents of her route had grown accustomed to Maggie's professional demeanor and genuine care for their mail delivery needs. She never gossiped about packages or letters, never pried into personal business, and always took extra care with fragile items or important documents. Children waved at her from school bus windows, elderly residents trusted her with spare keys for package deliveries when they were away, and busy parents knew they could count on her to leave packages in secure locations. But beneath the surface of this perfectly ordinary life, Maggie remained alert in ways that her peaceful surroundings couldn't diminish. She still scanned parking lots for vehicles that didn't belong, still noticed when the same car appeared in different locations along her route, still felt the familiar tension when unfamiliar faces appeared in familiar places. These weren't paranoid delusions. They were survival skills that had kept her alive in situations that her current neighbors couldn't imagine. And lately those skills had been telling her that something was different, small changes in routine, subtle shifts in the normal patterns of suburban life. Nothing dramatic enough to report, nothing concrete enough to explain, but enough to make the woman who had delivered mail faithfully for 25 years wonder if her carefully constructed ordinary life was about to become anything but ordinary. The morning that would change everything started like any other, with Maggie sorting mail in the quiet efficiency of the Riverside Heights post office, unaware that her past was about to collide with her present in ways that would reshape not just her own life, but the lives of everyone who had come to depend on the reliable postal worker who knew more about keeping secrets than anyone could have imagined. At 10:47 a.m., Maggie made a decision that would shatter 25 years of carefully maintained cover. Instead of returning directly to the post office as protocol demanded, she drove her postal truck to the abandoned Riverside Shopping Center, a defunct mall that had closed 3 years earlier when the newer commercial district opened across town. The parking lot was empty except for scattered debris and weeds growing through cracks in the asphalt. Maggie parked behind the old department store Anchor, where her vehicle would be invisible from the main road, but she could observe anyone who might have followed her. She turned off the engine and sat in complete silence, listening for sounds that didn't belong in an abandoned commercial space. After confirming she was alone, Maggie retrieved a cell phone from beneath the spare tire in her truck. Not the standard-issue postal service phone she carried daily, but a device that had remained unused for over 2 decades. The phone was a relic from another life, encrypted with technology that was cutting edge when she had received it but now seemed primitive compared to modern smartphones. Yet it still functioned, and more importantly, it still connected to networks that officially didn't exist. Her fingers hesitated over the keypad as muscle memory fought against 25 years of deliberate forgetting. The number she needed to dial was burned into her consciousness, a sequence of digits that had meant the difference between extraction and abandonment in places where American citizens weren't supposed to be operating. She had sworn never to use it again, never to reconnect with a world that had consumed the first half of her adult life. But Dr. Whitfield's terrified expression haunted her thoughts. Dorothy Hendricks's empty house violated every pattern Maggie had observed over 6 years of daily deliveries. The coordinated surveillance suggested an operation significant enough to deploy multiple federal agencies, and the anonymous text message had confirmed that someone with access to classified communication channels was monitoring her specifically. Maggie dialed the number. The connection took longer than modern phones typically required, routing through multiple encrypted relays before finally producing a tone that she recognized from briefings conducted in secure facilities that didn't appear on any public maps. When the call was answered, there was no greeting, no identification, just the sound of someone waiting for authentication codes that would prove the caller had legitimate reasons for accessing this particular communication channel. Nightingale 7 requesting priority consultation, Maggie said, using the operational designation she hadn't spoken aloud since 1999. Her voice carried the crisp precision of someone accustomed to conveying critical information in minimal words. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The response came after a pause that lasted exactly 15 seconds, long enough for voice recognition software to confirm identity and access authorization protocols that existed in databases most government employees never knew existed. Authentication confirmed, priority consultation approved, state your situation, Nightingale 7. Multiple federal surveillance teams deployed to my operational area. Civilians in my sector showing signs of intimidation and questioning. Request immediate intelligence assessment regarding potential compromise of long-term cover assignment. Another pause, this one filled with the subtle clicking sounds of secure data transmission. Maggie could visualize analysts in windowless rooms accessing files that would explain why a postal worker in suburban Colorado was suddenly at the center of what appeared to be a significant federal investigation. Nightingale 7, your sector has been designated an active operational zone as of 0600 hours today. Multiple residents in your coverage area have been flagged for immediate investigation following intelligence breach at a classified research facility. Your continued presence in the area of interest has been noted by investigating teams. The words hit Maggie like a physical blow. After 25 years of maintaining perfect operational security, of building a life so ordinary that it would never attract attention, circumstances beyond her control had placed her directly in the path of an investigation that could unravel everything she had worked to protect. Request clarification on the nature of intelligence breach and connection to civilian residents, she said, though part of her already knew the answer would explain too much. Dr. James Whitfield, residing at 447 Pine Valley Drive in your delivery sector, was identified as a potential asset in a classified research project designated Black Valley. Subject received unauthorized contact from foreign intelligence operatives attempting to acquire information regarding experimental technologies developed between 1995 and 2001. Investigation revealed multiple other residents in your operational area have historical connections to classified projects from the same time period. Maggie's blood turned to ice. Black Valley had been her final assignment before requesting extraction from active operations. The project had involved developing communication technologies that could penetrate electronic surveillance systems used by hostile governments. She had spent 18 months embedded in research facilities posing as administrative support while actually providing security assessment and counterintelligence protection for scientists working on technologies that could reshape global intelligence capabilities. The project had been terminated abruptly when security was compromised, and all personnel involved had been reassigned to eliminate any connections that might allow foreign operatives to reconstruct the research. Maggie had been given a new identity and assigned to the most mundane civilian occupation available, postal delivery in a small Colorado suburb where nothing significant ever happened. Requesting immediate extraction protocols, she said, knowing even as she spoke that 25 years of civilian life had probably eliminated her eligibility for traditional protection programs. Negative on extraction. Nightingale 7. Your embedded position provides unique intelligence opportunities. Investigating teams are unaware of your operational background. Your continued presence allows monitoring of federal investigation methods while providing protection for compromised civilians in your sector. The implications crystallized with devastating clarity. She wasn't being extracted because her cover had been blown. She was being activated because her cover was still intact. The federal investigators surveilling her route had no idea that the postal worker they were observing was a former intelligence operative with extensive knowledge of the very project they were investigating. On Curl, her handlers wanted her to remain in position, maintaining her civilian identity while secretly monitoring the investigation and protecting residents who might have been connected to classified research projects they probably didn't even remember participating in. It was the kind of impossible assignment that had defined her previous career, operating in plain sight while everyone around her remained unaware of her true capabilities and purpose. Understood, Maggie replied, though understanding and accepting were entirely different concepts. Request operational parameters and communication protocols for ongoing assignment. Maintain current civilian cover at all costs. Monitor federal investigation activities. Protect compromised civilians using minimal intervention methods. Daily reports through this channel at 2,100 hours. Operational designation remains Nightingale 7. Your sector is now classified as an active assignment zone. The connection terminated with the same abrupt efficiency that had characterized all her operational communications decades earlier. Maggie sat in her postal truck in the abandoned parking lot, staring at the encrypted phone that had just reconnected her to a world she thought she had left forever. 25 years of delivering mail, of building relationships with residents who trusted her with their daily correspondence, of creating a life so thoroughly ordinary that she had almost convinced herself it was real. All of it had been preparation for this moment, when her carefully constructed civilian identity would become the perfect cover for protecting people who didn't know they needed protection. Dr. Whitfield's research, Dorothy Hendricks's VA correspondence, the unusual package deliveries she had noticed over the years. They were all connected to classified projects that had shaped American intelligence capabilities in ways the public would never know. And now foreign operatives were trying to exploit those connections, while federal investigators were trying to prevent information from falling into the wrong hands. Maggie started her postal truck and drove back toward her route, where government surveillance teams were monitoring every movement, residents were hiding behind closed curtains, and her ordinary life was about to become the most complex undercover operation she had ever undertaken. The difference was that this time, she wasn't protecting classified information or government assets. She was protecting her neighbors, people who had trusted her with their mail for 25 years, and deserved to remain safe in the suburban paradise they thought they inhabited. For the first time since 1999, Nightingale 7 was operational again. Margaret Chen had been recruited for intelligence work in 1977, fresh out of MIT with dual degrees in electrical engineering and linguistics. At 22, she possessed the rare combination of technical expertise and language skills that made her invaluable to agencies that operated in the shadows between diplomacy and warfare. Her fluency in Mandarin, Korean, Russian, and Arabic had caught the attention of recruiters who understood that the Cold War was evolving into something far more complex than simple ideological opposition. Her official employment history showed a progression through various technology consulting firms, but the reality was 18 years of deep cover operations that took her from Silicon Valley research facilities to underground laboratories in countries that didn't officially exist on intelligence maps. She had posed as a systems analyst while actually installing surveillance equipment in foreign technology companies. She had worked as a translator at international conferences while secretly recording conversations between scientists who thought they were discussing theoretical research. The Black Valley Project had been her masterpiece of operational integration. For 18 months, she had maintained her cover as Margaret Chen, administrative coordinator for a consortium of universities researching advanced communication technologies. Her job involved scheduling meetings, managing paperwork, and coordinating between researchers who were developing systems that could revolutionize how intelligence agencies gathered information in hostile environments. What the researchers never knew was that Margaret was actually evaluating every aspect of their work for security vulnerabilities, identifying which technologies could be weaponized by foreign governments, and ensuring that the most sensitive developments remained protected from industrial espionage. She had attended every meeting, reviewed every document, and memorized every detail of research that would later be classified at levels that erased its existence from official records. The Black Valley technologies were designed to create undetectable communication networks that could operate in environments where traditional signals intelligence was impossible. The applications were staggering: emergency communications during natural disasters, coordination for rescue operations in remote locations, and most importantly, secure channels for intelligence operatives working in countries where discovery meant death. Dr. James Whitfield had been the lead researcher on quantum encryption protocols that would make the communication networks virtually impossible to intercept. His work involved mathematical concepts so advanced that only a handful of people worldwide could fully understand the implications. But Margaret had understood enough to know that Dr. Whitfield's research could either protect American lives or, in the wrong hands, make American intelligence operations impossible to conduct safely. The project had been compromised in 1999 when a security contractor with gambling debts sold research summaries to representatives of a foreign government that specialized in acquiring American technology through methods that fell just short of declarations of war. The breach had been discovered during a routine security audit. But by then, enough information had been transferred to require immediate termination of the entire project. Margaret's extraction had been orchestrated with the same precision that characterized all successful intelligence operations. Over a period of 6 months, her administrative role was gradually reduced, her security clearances were quietly revoked, and her employment was terminated for budget reasons that appeared completely legitimate to anyone reviewing personnel records. She had simply disappeared into the vast bureaucracy of government contractors who moved between projects without leaving traces that could be followed. The creation of her new identity as a postal worker had been inspired by the need for deep cover that would never attract attention from foreign intelligence services trying to track down personnel connected to Black Valley. Postal workers were invisible to most people, granted access to homes and businesses without triggering security concerns, and their work patterns provided perfect cover for maintaining surveillance of specific geographic areas. Margaret's assignment to Riverside Heights hadn't been random. The suburb had been chosen because it was far enough from major cities to discourage foreign operatives from conducting regular surveillance, but close enough to government facilities that unusual activities wouldn't seem out of place. Her mail route had been designed to include the homes of other former Black Valley personnel who had been relocated with new identities and civilian occupations. Over 25 years, she had unknowingly been delivering mail to people who shared her secret history. Dr. Whitfield had transitioned from quantum encryption research to teaching theoretical mathematics at the local university. Dorothy Hendricks had been a laboratory technician who processed samples of experimental materials. Her Veterans Affairs correspondence related to exposure compensation for chemicals that officially didn't exist. The Chen family, Michael Chen and his wife Linda, had been translators who worked on communications intercepted during Black Valley field tests. The beautiful irony was that Margaret had spent 2.5 decades protecting people who were connected to the same classified project that had defined her operational career, and none of them recognized each other. Their cover identities had been so thoroughly constructed that they had all become the people they were pretending to be, living authentic suburban lives while carrying secrets that could compromise national security if they fell into wrong hands. But foreign intelligence services had long memories and extensive resources. The gambling debts that had compromised Black Valley in 1999 had been carefully tracked by agencies that specialized in exploiting American security vulnerabilities. 25 years later, those same agencies had finally developed the capabilities to systematically identify and locate personnel who had been connected to classified research projects. The sophisticated analysis involved cross-referencing employment records, residential patterns, and communication histories to identify individuals whose official biographies didn't match their actual capabilities or knowledge. Dr. Whitfield's transition from advanced research to suburban teaching had been flagged by algorithms designed to detect when highly qualified people disappeared into mundane occupations. Dorothy Hendricks's medical treatments for exposure to non-existent chemicals had triggered automated alerts and systems that monitored unusual Veterans Affairs claims. Margaret's own position had remained secure only because postal employment was so thoroughly documented and regulated that creating false histories required access to systems that foreign intelligence services couldn't easily penetrate. Her cover had been built by professionals who understood that the best way to hide someone was to give them a job that generated extensive paperwork while requiring no specialized qualifications that might attract attention. The federal investigation currently surrounding her route represented American intelligence agencies' response to discovering that foreign operatives were systematically targeting former Black Valley personnel. The surveillance teams weren't investigating her residence for security violations. They were trying to protect them from foreign agents who wanted to exploit their knowledge of technologies that remained classified decades after the project's termination. Margaret's reactivation as Nightingale 7 meant that she would now be operating in the most complex environment she had ever encountered. She had to maintain her civilian identity while secretly protecting people who didn't know they needed protection, monitor federal agents who didn't know she was qualified to evaluate their methods, and prevent foreign operatives from acquiring information that could compromise ongoing intelligence operations. Her 25 years of postal experience had given her unprecedented access to information about her neighbors' daily routines, personal connections, and potential vulnerabilities. She knew which houses had security systems, which residents traveled frequently, and which delivery patterns might indicate unusual activities. This knowledge, combined with her intelligence training, made her the perfect asset for detecting threats that conventional surveillance might miss. The transformation from Margaret Chen, postal worker, to Nightingale 7, intelligence operative, required mental adjustments that challenged everything she had built during her civilian years. She had to remember skills that she had deliberately suppressed, recall training that she had tried to forget, and activate capabilities that had been dormant for decades. But as she drove her postal truck back toward Riverside Heights, where government surveillance teams were monitoring every movement and foreign operatives might be planning their next approach, Margaret felt something she hadn't experienced since 1999, the absolute clarity that came from having a mission that mattered more than personal safety or comfort. Her neighbors' lives depended on her ability to be both the reliable postal worker they trusted and the intelligence operative they would never know existed. By 2:30 p.m., Margaret had identified the foreign operatives. They weren't in the obvious government vehicles that had captured everyone's attention. Those were American surveillance teams, positioned with the subtle aggression that characterized federal law enforcement operations. The real threat came from two individuals who had integrated themselves so seamlessly into the neighborhood's daily rhythm that even the federal agents hadn't detected their presence. The first was a woman in her 30s, jogging the same route through Riverside Heights that legitimate residents used for exercise. But her pace was too consistent, her breathing too controlled, and her path provided visual access to every house on Margaret's route that contained former Black Valley personnel. Most telling was her choice to jog during midday hours when the streets were nearly empty, abandoning the social camouflage that morning and evening runners provided. The second operative posed as a utility worker, complete with official-looking van and equipment that would pass casual inspection. He had been checking electrical meters throughout the neighborhood, but his pattern showed systematic documentation of security systems, entry points, and daily routines at specific residences. His work was too thorough for routine maintenance, and too focused on houses that happened to contain people with classified knowledge they didn't remember possessing. Margaret's advantage was that neither the foreign operatives nor the federal surveillance teams knew she was watching them, with trained eyes that could distinguish between authentic civilian behavior and professional operational conduct. Her postal uniform provided perfect justification for being present throughout the neighborhood, while her delivery schedule allowed her to observe patterns that stationary surveillance teams would miss. At 3:15 p.m., she made her first intervention. The female operative had positioned herself near Dr. Whitfield's house, using the pretense of stretching after her jog to conduct detailed surveillance of his property. Margaret approached on foot, carrying a package that required a signature, creating a legitimate reason to engage with anyone in the vicinity. "Excuse me," Margaret said, adopting the friendly tone of a postal worker seeking assistance. "I'm looking for 445 Pine Valley Drive. Do you know if that's the blue house or the white one?" The operative's response revealed extensive training in maintaining cover identities. She provided helpful directions while appearing genuinely concerned about assisting a confused postal worker. But her body positioning maintained visual contact with Dr. Whitfield's house, and her hand remained near a jacket pocket that showed the subtle outline of communication equipment. Halted. Margaret thanked her and continued toward the address she had mentioned, but not before noting that the woman's jogging shoes showed wear patterns inconsistent with regular running. The treads were worn in ways that suggested extensive walking on concrete surfaces, the kind of pattern produced by urban surveillance work rather than suburban exercise routines. At 4 p.m., Margaret encountered the utility worker near Dorothy Hendricks's house. She approached him directly, carrying her postal bag and wearing the expression of someone dealing with a minor inconvenience. "I've been trying to deliver a certified letter to Mrs. Hendricks all day, but she's not answering her door. Have you seen her around? I'm getting worried." The man's response was professionally executed. Appropriate concern for an elderly neighbor combined with helpful suggestions about where she might have gone. But his eyes showed recognition that shouldn't have existed. He knew exactly who Dorothy Hendricks was and why she wasn't answering her door, information that no legitimate utility worker would possess. More concerning was his reaction to Margaret's presence. While maintaining his cover persona, he was evaluating her with the systematic attention of someone trained to assess potential threats. The utility worker wasn't just conducting surveillance. He was identifying targets and planning approaches that would allow him to access information without triggering official attention. Margaret's training allowed her to recognize the signs of an operation moving from intelligence gathering to active acquisition. The foreign operatives had completed their reconnaissance phase and were preparing to make contact with former Black Valley personnel. The federal surveillance teams were positioned to observe and react, but their presence would actually provide cover for carefully planned approaches that would appear to be chance encounters or routine interactions. At 4:45 p.m., Margaret implemented a strategy that would disrupt the foreign operation without revealing her own capabilities. She began altering the daily routines that the operatives had been documenting. Using her legitimate access to neighborhood properties, she started creating security concerns that would force residents to change their patterns and make planned approaches impossible to execute. Her first stop was the Morrison family at 1247 Pine Valley Drive. She informed them that she had noticed their gate latch was broken, creating a security risk that might allow strangers to access their backyard. The conversation naturally led to suggestions about upgrading their security system and being more cautious about unexpected visitors. At the Nguyen residence, Margaret mentioned that she had seen unfamiliar vehicles in the neighborhood and recommended that they verify the identity of anyone claiming to be conducting utility work or home inspections. She provided specific details about what legitimate service providers should be able to present as identification. Each interaction served multiple purposes. Margaret was warning residents about potential threats without revealing classified information, disrupting operational planning by changing target routines, and establishing herself as a source of neighborhood security information that would make future surveillance more difficult. By 5:30 p.m., Margaret had systematically compromised every aspect of the foreign operation. The female operative's jogging route had been disrupted by increased pedestrian traffic, as concerned residents began taking evening walks to check their own security. The utility workers' access to properties was complicated by homeowners who now demanded extensive identification and verification before allowing anyone to examine their electrical systems. But Margaret's most sophisticated intervention involved Dr. Whitfield. She arrived at his house carrying what appeared to be a routine package delivery, but her approach triggered a conversation about the morning's disturbing visitors. Dr. Whitfield was clearly traumatized by whatever had occurred, and Margaret carefully guided the discussion toward practical security measures without revealing her professional knowledge of threat assessment. "Dr. Whitfield, I've been delivering mail in this neighborhood for 25 years, and I've never seen the kind of activity that's happening today. If I were you, I'd consider staying with friends or family for a few days, just until things settle down." Her suggestion was phrased as neighborly concern, but it represented tactical advice that would remove the primary target from the operational environment. Dr. Whitfield's knowledge of quantum encryption protocols made him the most valuable asset for foreign intelligence services trying to reconstruct Black Valley technologies. By 6:15 p.m., Margaret observed the foreign operatives making the decision to abort their planned acquisition. The female operative had ceased her jogging routine and was moving toward an extraction point near the neighborhood's main entrance. The utility worker had packed his equipment and was preparing to leave the area. Their careful surveillance work had been rendered useless by security improvements and routine changes that appeared to be natural neighborhood responses to increased federal presence. Margaret's final action was reporting the foreign operative's descriptions and vehicle information to the federal surveillance teams through an anonymous tip that appeared to come from a concerned resident. She used a payphone at a gas station outside the neighborhood, adopting the voice and manner of someone who had noticed suspicious activities but wasn't sure whether they warranted official attention. The tip provided federal agents with actionable intelligence while maintaining Margaret's civilian cover. Within 30 minutes, both foreign operatives had been taken into custody for immigration violations that would allow extensive questioning about their activities and intentions. As evening approached, Margaret completed her postal route with the satisfaction of knowing that she had successfully protected former Black Valley personnel without compromising her own operational security or revealing classified information to unauthorized individuals. The foreign intelligence operation had been neutralized using nothing more sophisticated than neighborhood awareness and community cooperation. Margaret had demonstrated that sometimes the most effective counterintelligence work involved making potential targets too difficult to approach rather than confronting threats directly. Her first day as an active operative in 25 years had been a complete success, but she knew this was only the beginning of what would likely be an extended assignment protecting people who would never know how close they had come to losing everything they had built in their carefully constructed civilian lives. The Delta Force operators arrived at 7:23 a.m. the following morning. Margaret was sorting mail at the Riverside Heights post office when she noticed the convoy through the window. 3 unmarked vehicles moving with a disciplined precision that distinguished special operations units from conventional military or law enforcement. The lead vehicle parked directly outside the postal facility, while the other 2 took positions that provided overlapping security coverage of the entire block. Tom Bradley, her supervisor, looked up from his paperwork with confusion as 6 men in civilian clothing entered the post office. They moved with the controlled aggression of individuals trained to operate in hostile environments, their eyes automatically scanning for threats and escape routes despite being in a suburban Colorado postal facility. "We need to speak with Margaret Chen," the team leader announced, presenting credentials that identified him as Major David Kane, United States Army Special Operations Command. The identification was legitimate, but Margaret recognized that his actual unit designation would be classified at levels that didn't appear on standard military documentation. Margaret approached the group with the calm demeanor of a postal worker dealing with unexpected official business, but internally she was evaluating threat levels and calculating response options with the automatic precision of her intelligence training. The presence of Delta Force operators meant that her successful neutralization of the foreign operatives had triggered consequences that extended far beyond local counterintelligence concerns. "Is there a private area where we can talk?" Major Kane asked, his tone carrying the kind of respectful authority that suggested he knew exactly who he was addressing, despite her civilian appearance. They moved to the postal facility's conference room, a modest space normally used for employee meetings and safety briefings. As the door closed, Margaret felt the familiar tension of operational environments where every word would be analyzed and every response would influence decisions that could affect national security. "Ms. Chen, we're here because yesterday's events have created a situation that requires immediate resolution," Major Kane began. "The foreign operatives you identified and neutralized were part of a larger operation targeting former Black Valley personnel across multiple states. Your intervention prevented what could have become a significant intelligence breach." Margaret maintained her civilian persona while carefully evaluating the information being shared. The fact that Delta Force had been deployed suggested that the threat to former Black Valley personnel was far more extensive than her handlers had initially indicated. Special operations units weren't activated for routine counterintelligence work. They were deployed when situations required capabilities that conventional agencies couldn't provide. "I'm not sure I understand," Margaret replied, adopting the confused tone of someone who had simply reported suspicious activities to appropriate authorities. "I just noticed some people acting strangely in my neighborhood and thought the police should know." Major Kane's expression indicated that he wasn't fooled by her civilian act, but he appreciated her operational discipline in maintaining cover even during official contact. "Ms. Chen, We know about your background. We know about Nightingale 7. And we know that your actions yesterday demonstrated capabilities that go far beyond concerned citizen observations. The acknowledgement of her operational identity meant that the compartmentalization that had protected her civilian life for 25 years was being officially dissolved. Margaret realized that she was facing a decision point that would determine whether she could return to her postal route or whether her intelligence career was being reactivated permanently. The foreign intelligence operation you disrupted was coordinated by the same organization that compromised Black Valley in 1999, Major Kane continued. They've spent 25 years developing the capabilities to systematically locate and exploit former project personnel. Your intervention has given us the opportunity to neutralize their entire network, but we need your cooperation. Margaret understood the implications immediately. Her successful protection of Riverside Heights residents had provided intelligence agencies with evidence and operational methods that could be used to protect other former Black Valley personnel who were being targeted nationwide. Her local intervention had become a template for counter-operations that could save lives and protect classified information across multiple geographic areas. What kind of cooperation, she asked, knowing that the question would reveal her willingness to engage with official requests while maintaining plausible civilian uncertainty about the scope of what was being discussed. We need you to maintain your current position while providing intelligence support for operations in other locations, Major Kane explained. Your success yesterday demonstrated that former operatives with established civilian covers can provide protection and counterintelligence capabilities that conventional teams cannot match. You've become the prototype for a new approach to protecting classified personnel. The proposal was simultaneously flattering and terrifying. Margaret's postal route would continue to provide cover for intelligence work, but now she would be coordinating with active special operations units rather than operating in the isolated independence that had characterized her previous career. She would be part of a larger network designed to protect people who shared her background while using skills that she had hoped never to need again. Your neighbors will never know that anything changed, Major Kane assured her. You'll continue delivering mail, maintaining the same routines, building the same relationships, but you'll also be providing intelligence assessments and operational support for situations where former classified personnel need protection they don't know they're receiving. Margaret's response was immediate and decisive. I accept. The decision represented more than professional duty. It was a personal commitment to protecting people who had served their country in ways that would never be publicly recognized. Dr. Whitfield, Dorothy Hendricks, and her other neighbors deserved to live their suburban lives without fear that their past service would make them targets for foreign intelligence operations. Major Kane provided her with communication equipment that would allow secure contact with special operations units deployed to protect other former Black Valley personnel. The technology was sophisticated enough to integrate with postal service systems without creating detectable anomalies, ensuring that her cover would remain intact even under close surveillance. There's one more thing, Major Kane said as the meeting concluded. The foreign operatives you identified have provided intelligence that suggests additional threats to this area. We'll be maintaining a permanent security presence, but it will be invisible to civilian observation. Margaret realized that Riverside Heights would become a permanently secured area, protected by special operations units that would blend into the community so thoroughly that even she might not be able to identify them all. Her neighborhood would be safer than most military installations, but the residents would continue believing they lived in an ordinary suburban community, where the most exciting events were annual block parties and occasional coyote sightings. As she returned to her postal duties that afternoon, Margaret noticed subtle changes that confirmed the new security arrangements. A jogger who displayed the controlled breathing and situational awareness of special operations training. A maintenance worker whose tool selection and work patterns indicated combat engineering background. A new resident walking a dog while conducting the kind of environmental assessment that characterized protective surveillance operations. Her mail route had become a testing ground for integration between intelligence operations and civilian community life. The success of her intervention had proven that former operatives could provide protection while maintaining cover so complete that the people being protected would never know they had been in danger. Dorothy Hendricks answered her door that afternoon, accepting her mail with the grateful smile of someone who appreciated daily human contact. Dr. Whitfield waved from his garden, where he was planting flowers with the focused attention of someone who had decided that normal activities were the best response to abnormal circumstances. The Nayan family's children played in their front yard, their laughter echoing through streets that were now among the most secure locations in America. Margaret completed her deliveries with the satisfaction of knowing that 25 years of building relationships and maintaining trust had created something unprecedented. A community where classified intelligence work and suburban family life coexisted in perfect harmony, with neither side knowing about the other. The Delta Force operators had departed as quietly as they had arrived, but their recognition of her success had transformed her from a retired operative hiding in civilian life to an active asset protecting a community that had become her genuine home. For the first time since 1999, Nightingale 7 was exactly where she belonged. 3 years later, Margaret Chen still walks her route through Riverside Heights every morning, but her impact extends far beyond the 8 square miles of suburban Colorado that she calls home. Her success in protecting former Black Valley personnel while maintaining perfect civilian cover has revolutionized how American intelligence agencies approach the security of retired operatives and classified personnel. The Nightingale Protocol, named after her operational designation, has been implemented in 17 states, protecting over 300 former intelligence operatives, research scientists, and classified project personnel who thought their service to their country had ended decades ago. Each protected individual continues living their ordinary civilian life, unaware that they are safeguarded by retired operatives who have integrated themselves into their communities as teachers, shop owners, maintenance workers, and yes, postal workers. Margaret's daily routine remains unchanged to outside observation. She arrives at the post office at 6:45 a.m., sorts mail with the same methodical precision she has displayed for 28 years, and begins her route at exactly 7 a.m. To her neighbors, she is still the reliable postal worker who remembers their names, asks about their families, and ensures their mail arrives safely regardless of weather conditions. But beneath this familiar surface, Margaret coordinates a network of protection that spans the continental United States. Her encrypted communications equipment, disguised as standard postal service technology, allows her to provide guidance to other retired operatives who are learning to balance civilian occupations with the responsibility of protecting people who share their classified backgrounds. Every evening at 2100 hours, she files reports that help intelligence analysts identify emerging threats to former classified personnel. Her observations about unusual activities, unfamiliar faces, and changes in routine patterns contribute to threat assessments that prevent foreign intelligence operations before they can begin targeting vulnerable communities. Dr. James Whitfield, now 71, continues teaching theoretical mathematics at the local university, his lectures drawing students who appreciate his ability to explain complex concepts with patient clarity. He has no idea that his quantum encryption research from the 1990s remains so valuable that foreign governments still deploy operatives to acquire his knowledge. His peaceful academic life is protected by security measures so sophisticated that he perceives them as coincidental improvements to campus safety and community policing. Dorothy Hendricks, approaching her 82nd birthday, tends her garden with the enthusiasm of someone who has found purpose in nurturing life. Her work as a laboratory technician processing samples of experimental materials during the Black Valley Project exposed her to chemicals that required decades of medical monitoring, but she believes her Veterans Affairs benefits stem from routine administrative processing rather than classified compensation for exposure to substances that officially never existed. The Chen family, Michael, Linda, and their now teenage children, have become pillars of the Riverside Heights community. Michael coaches youth soccer, Linda volunteers at the library, and their children excel in school while planning for colleges that will prepare them for careers they can discuss openly. Unlike their parents' former work translating intercepted communications that shaped American intelligence operations in ways the public will never know, Margaret watches all of them with the protective satisfaction of someone who has found the perfect synthesis between professional duty and personal connection. Her 28 years of mail delivery have created relationships that transcend the operational requirements of her intelligence assignment. These people are not just protected assets, they are her neighbors, her community, her chosen family, and a life that allows her to serve her country while building the human connections that her previous career had made impossible. The broader impact of Margaret's success extends beyond individual protection to fundamental changes in how intelligence agencies approach the transition from classified service to civilian life. The traditional model of providing new identities and geographic relocation has been supplemented by community integration programs that allow former operatives to use their skills in service of collective security rather than individual anonymity. Retired intelligence operatives across the country now have the option to maintain their civilian careers while participating in protection networks that safeguard others who share their backgrounds. A former CIA analyst working as a high school history teacher in Oregon provides security assessments for other retired operatives in her region. A retired NSA cryptographer who became a small-town librarian in Vermont uses his position to monitor communications for threats to former classified personnel throughout New England. This distributed approach to security has proven more effective than centralized protection programs because it leverages the natural community integration that makes effective cover possible. Foreign intelligence services find it nearly impossible to identify and target individuals who are protected by networks of people who appear to be ordinary citizens pursuing normal civilian occupations. Margaret's influence has also inspired changes in how current intelligence operatives prepare for eventual civilian transition. Training programs now include modules on community integration, civilian occupation selection, and the psychological skills necessary to maintain authentic relationships while preserving operational security. Future retirees learn that service to their country doesn't end when they leave classified positions. It evolves into new forms that protect the homeland from within the communities that represent American values. The success of the Nightingale Protocol has attracted international attention from allied intelligence services facing similar challenges in protecting retired operatives. British, Canadian, and Australian agencies have implemented variations of the program, creating a multinational network of protected communities where former intelligence personnel can live authentic civilian lives while contributing to collective security efforts. But perhaps the most profound impact of Margaret's story is its demonstration that heroism often takes forms that will never be recognized publicly. The residents of Riverside Heights sleep safely in their suburban homes, send their children to school without fear, and plan their futures with confidence, never knowing that their security depends on a postal worker who chose service over anonymity when her community needed protection. Margaret's daily walk through tree-lined streets represents something more significant than mail delivery. It embodies the principle that those who have served their country in the shadows continue serving long after their official duties end. Her willingness to risk her carefully constructed civilian life to protect neighbors who didn't know they needed protection reflects values that transcend individual safety or comfort. Every letter delivered, every package signed for, every friendly conversation with residents who trust her with their daily correspondence contributes to a larger mission that connects national security with community well-being. Margaret has proven that the most important intelligence work sometimes involves ensuring that ordinary people can live extraordinary lives without ever knowing about the threats that surround them. As she completes her route each afternoon, Margaret carries with her the knowledge that tomorrow will bring new challenges requiring the same balance of professional expertise and personal commitment that has defined her remarkable career. The streets of Riverside Heights remain peaceful, the residents continue pursuing their dreams, and the postal worker who protects them all maintains the perfect cover of someone whose greatest concern is ensuring that the mail arrives on time. In a world where intelligence operations are increasingly technological and impersonal, Margaret Chen represents the enduring importance of human connection in protecting the values that make freedom possible. Her story reminds us that sometimes the most crucial battles for national security are fought not in foreign countries or government facilities, but in suburban neighborhoods where families trust their safety to heroes who wear postal uniforms instead of military decorations. The training facility hidden beneath a decommissioned warehouse in Virginia has become the premier center for educating operatives in community integration techniques. Margaret travels there quarterly to conduct seminars on maintaining authentic civilian relationships while preserving operational effectiveness. Her curriculum, developed from 28 years of real-world experience, teaches future protectors how to build trust without compromising security, how to observe threats without appearing suspicious, and how to coordinate with law enforcement without revealing classified capabilities. The students who attend her sessions are carefully selected veterans of intelligence operations who have demonstrated both technical competence and psychological stability necessary for long-term civilian integration. They learn that protecting retired operatives requires different skills than traditional intelligence work: patience instead of aggression, community building instead of infiltration, prevention instead of reaction. Margaret's teaching methods emphasize the importance of genuine commitment to civilian occupations. Students practice their cover careers with the same intensity they once applied to classified operations. Understanding that authentic expertise in mundane professions provides the perfect foundation for extraordinary protection capabilities. A former Navy SEAL learns automotive repair not just as cover, but as a valuable service to communities he will protect. A retired Air Force intelligence officer masters elementary education because teaching children requires the same attention to detail and protective instincts that make effective security work possible. Hey, the psychological challenges of maintaining dual identities receive particular attention in Margaret's curriculum. Many former operatives struggle with the transition from high-stakes international operations to suburban community life, finding it difficult to invest emotionally in civilian relationships when they remember colleagues who died in classified operations that will never be publicly acknowledged. Margaret teaches them that protecting people who will never know they need protection represents the highest form of service, ensuring that American families can live safely without bearing the psychological burden of understanding the threats that surround them. Her own example demonstrates the rewards of this approach. The residents of Riverside Heights have enriched her life in ways that classified operations never could. She has attended high school graduations, baby showers, retirement parties, and funeral services that connected her to the fundamental human experiences that give meaning to national security work. Her neighbors trust her with their personal stories, seek her advice during difficult times, and include her in celebrations that remind her why intelligence operatives risk their lives to protect democratic values. The economic impact of the Nightingale Protocol has surprised government administrators who expected community integration programs to require substantial budgetary resources. Instead, retired operatives performing civilian occupations while providing security services have proven more cost-effective than traditional protection programs that require dedicated personnel and facility maintenance. A postal worker who doubles as a security coordinator costs significantly less than a full-time protection detail, while providing superior intelligence gathering capabilities and community integration that makes threats easier to detect and prevent. Corporate America has also begun recognizing the value of hiring veterans with intelligence backgrounds for positions that require attention to detail, situational awareness, and the ability to maintain security without disrupting normal business operations. Major shipping companies now actively recruit former operatives for logistics positions that allow them to monitor supply chain security while performing legitimate commercial functions. Technology firms value the expertise of retired cyber warfare specialists who can protect corporate networks while developing software that appears to have purely civilian applications. The international ramifications of Margaret's success continue expanding as allied intelligence services share information about threats to former classified personnel. A coordinated database now tracks foreign intelligence operations targeting retired operatives across multiple countries, allowing for preventative measures that protect individuals before they become aware they are being pursued. The cooperation has strengthened relationships between allied agencies, while demonstrating that national security challenges require innovative solutions that transcend traditional operational boundaries. The residents of her route had grown accustomed to Maggie's professional demeanor and genuine care for their mail delivery needs. She never gossiped about packages or letters, never pried into personal business, and always took extra care with fragile items or important documents. Children waved at her from school bus windows. Elderly residents trusted her with spare keys for package deliveries when they were away, and busy parents knew they could count on her to leave packages in secure locations. But beneath the surface of this perfectly ordinary life, Maggie remained alert in ways that her peaceful surroundings couldn't diminish. She still scanned parking lots for vehicles that didn't belong, still noticed when the same car appeared in different locations along her route, still felt the familiar tension when unfamiliar faces appeared in familiar places. These weren't paranoid delusions. They were survival skills that had kept her alive in situations that her current neighbors couldn't imagine. And lately those skills had been telling her that something was different, small changes in routine, subtle shifts in the normal patterns of suburban life. Nothing dramatic enough to report, nothing concrete enough to explain, but enough to make the woman who had delivered mail faithfully for 25 years wonder if her carefully constructed ordinary life was about to become anything but ordinary. The morning that would change everything started like any other, with Maggie sorting mail in the quiet efficiency of the Riverside Heights post office, unaware that her past was about to collide with her present in ways that would reshape not just her own life, but the lives of everyone who had come to depend on the reliable postal worker who knew more about keeping secrets than anyone could have imagined. At 10:47 a.m., Maggie made a decision that would shatter 25 years of carefully maintained cover. Instead of returning directly to the post office as protocol demanded, she drove her postal truck to the abandoned Riverside Shopping Center, a defunct mall that had closed 3 years earlier when the newer commercial district opened across town. The parking lot was empty except for scattered debris and weeds growing through cracks in the asphalt. Maggie parked behind the old department store Anchor, where her vehicle would be invisible from the main road, but she could observe anyone who might have followed her. She turned off the engine and sat in complete silence, listening for sounds that didn't belong in an abandoned commercial space. After confirming she was alone, Maggie retrieved a cell phone from beneath the spare tire in her truck. Not the standard-issue postal service phone she carried daily, but a device that had remained unused for over 2 decades. The phone was a relic from another life, encrypted with technology that was cutting-edge when she had received it but now seemed primitive compared to modern smartphones. Yet it still functioned, and more importantly, it still connected to networks that officially didn't exist. The educational institutions where Dr. Whitfield and other former Black Valley personnel work have unknowingly benefited from security improvements that Margaret coordinates through her network connections. Campus security systems, emergency response protocols, and visitor screening procedures have been enhanced using expertise that appears to come from routine security consultations, but actually represents sophisticated threat prevention measures designed to protect individuals whose knowledge remains valuable to foreign intelligence services. Margaret's story has inspired documentary projects and academic research that explore the intersection between national security and community life, though her identity and specific operations remain classified. The broader principles of her approach, community integration, authentic relationship building, and preventative security measures, have influenced policies that extend beyond intelligence work to encompass how government agencies interact with civilian populations during security operations. The legacy of Nightingale 7 continues every morning at 7 a.m. when a postal worker begins her route through streets that are safer because someone chose to remember that service to the country means protecting the people who make America worth defending. Her footsteps echo through neighborhoods across the nation, where other retired operatives carry mail, teach children, repair automobiles, and perform countless civilian occupations, while maintaining vigilant protection of those who once shared their classified world and now deserve to live freely in the democratic society they helped preserve. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.